Hey guys, Morphologist here.
What's up, guys? It's Wasted Space.
Hey guys, it's CaptainShack from the XP Gamers.
And today we're talking about not a patch that's come out, but instead a patch that we would like to see in the future. And we've got a few ideas today, specifically 6. So who would like to go first?
6 ideas.
Yeah, I might as well kick off first. So we're going to sort of approach this from the idea that we're going to introduce the 6 ideas real briefly to kick off with, and then we're going to go into them a bit more depth and discuss it a bit. So to start off with, my kind of 2 is going to be I want a UI revamp, and I want galaxies.
Oh yes.
Oh yes. And then
Oh yes.
For me, I've got 2 as well. I've got mapping modules, which sort of kind of ties into Wasted Space's idea, and a survival revamp, which is sort of like a planetary start sort of thing.
Oh, I love this because these all tie together. I've got a faction like overarching AI, and we'll go into that more. And then of course, physical cargo, like real cargo.
Okay, that's damn cool. So we've got some interesting ideas, and I think maybe let's start off with Morph and kind of go through one by one and kind of discuss this a bit and see how things break down and what people's opinions are.
All right, so I just want to explain a little bit more in detail what the mapping modules is for me and what I sort of think of this idea. I'm thinking of like something that you build inside of Space Engineers, like a tool that you can see, an actual map that you can open up then in your AI after you've built it, that shows the places you've been and maps them in 3 dimensions. If you've played EVE Online, it has a sort of 3-dimensional mapping system that's already there, but I'm sort of thinking of a system that's generated off of the automatically generated planet and asteroid locations, again, depending on where you've been. And then as an addition to that, that could tie into some sort of networked system of territorial claim modules that would create a 3-dimensional sort of blob that would change its shape depending on where you place these modules, and they would have to be destroyed or removed if you wanted to take over said territory.
Oh, I love this concept. So let me get this straight now. So the idea for the map itself kind of sounds like what they have in, and I hate to make this example, but how Minecraft has it where you make a map, and then as you explore, you kind of open up more of that map that you see as you actually get out there. And then the EVE Online style, like 3-dimensional map that you're talking about, where you can actually take over territory and show it is like, this is my area.
Yeah, that's absolutely what I'm talking about. I would love something to be generated like that, not something necessarily pre-created, because the game, the way it works now, it's sort of stuff is randomly generated as you proceed through the infinite universe, and so the map would have to adapt to something like that.
I think that
everybody's map would be different.
I think that'd be a really nice way of giving people kind of a perspective of where they sit in the grand scheme of things, and also meaning that the little outposts you build actually have some sort of meaning. They kind of give you a proper link back, especially if perhaps you could introduce something like a fog of war to this as well, something where you don't get live updates on that map unless you have active antennas in an area, for example. It reveals it but doesn't necessarily update info about what's in it. And then you can kind of have a real purpose behind why you'd want to expand and create networks of information, essentially.
Yeah, I think
definitely, yeah.
This is like sort of where, I suppose that's the reason really why I've been sort of pushing this idea, is that currently in the game you can expand into this universe, but there's no way to map where you've been, there's no way to claim a territory necessarily unless you've got a beacon, which has only got a limited amount of range. And so this would really give people a perspective on the universe, as you said, so that they know where they are and they know what sort of progression they have made in the universe that they exist in, and have a goal to say, I want to take over this part of the world or this part of the universe and eventually dominate the universe with my faction or my pirates or whatever.
On the flip side of that, if you guys have watched that blog type thing they've got on the community part of Steam, where this guy is like going across the universe. I don't know what his original goal was, but he's putting like captain's blogs up. If you could actually have a map showing the distance that you've traveled and the things that you've seen as you've gone that way, I mean, it would, like you said, it would give you a perspective on how far you've gone and where that resource node was or where that base is that you set up. I think that'd be really cool, actually.
I think the overriding "you are here" icon is kind of missing in Space Engineers a bit at the moment. You know, it's kind of, there's lots of stuff around, but none of it tangibly ties together without that idea of some sort of overriding perspective. The only thing I'd have as a kind of concern with this sort of thing is, while the whole idea of building something with like, I stick this down and this means this territory is mine is concerned, how that actually operates is kind of a bit more complicated. Like, What happens if someone comes and builds another one of those things that says you own that territory in the same space? You know,
Right. What does it mean to own it?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I guess that would be a whole nother discussion for another point.
God.
That is one hell of a big discussion, and I think that's
Which I might have some stuff on that when we get to mine. I was talking about faction AIs, but
Yeah, it does seem
True,
like
true.
a lot of our ideas tie together really, really nicely. But yeah, that's it's something we'd like to see in the future, but it's something that's definitely open to tweaking and figuring out what that actually means. Maybe the rollout is much more simple at first. It's just a way to map. And then the territorial thing could come in later once a sort of system's been figured out, because you do bring up some good points about how you would control that. And I think, there's ways to figure it out. There's definitely, it's just you have to balance things and make it make sense. But the goal of it all, and it is important to keep it in mind, is to increase the amount of fun you're having in the game and to make it a little bit more coherent so that you know who you're fighting, you know who the enemy is. It's always great to have an enemy in a game because that gives you a purpose. Like if you played EVE Online, everyone hates Goonswarm. Now they're called something else. I forget what the name of them are. But you have to have a Goonswarm because it gives people a focus, a goal, something to fight against, and that's what Space Engineers, at least in survival multiplayer, currently lacks. Let's not even talk about the fact that multiplayer currently doesn't work too well.
Well, speaking of survival, how about your second idea then, Morph? The survival revamp stuff. Talk to us a bit about that.
Yeah, it's a good way to sort of segue into that subject. Survival, I think right now it needs a little bit of work, and I think that we could scale it a little bit more in the direction of starting with planets, because we know planets are coming out very soon from what we've seen and what we're being told. We don't know when, but we know it's soon. And
they look good.
Oh, they look so
man,
good.
that last patch video with the
damn.
buggy being chased by the small fighter. I mean, the scale.
Damn, it looks
Sorry.
good. Damn,
I'm really
it looks
excited.
good.
I think we
It
all
looks so
are.
good.
The last two videos we've made have been like, let's be honest, every video we've made ever since we started this series has been based on like the idea of planets coming. So yeah, we're really excited about it, as I'm sure you guys are as well. But anyway, so I'm thinking we've all asked the question, especially in the last video, how are planets going to be important? What gives you the reason to go to them? Well, what if you started on them actually? What if the survival map that you always began on a planet, and you didn't even get a spacesuit? You actually had to find the resources and construct a module to create like your parts like you usually do, but you have to make a spacesuit, and then you have to make like modules for the spacesuit, like the jetpack. And that would give you a reason to sort of work off of planets and develop some sort of economy, and then work your way out into outer space and finally travel to other parts of the universe. And then this is just an idea, like a groundwork to start about thinking like what the game could be with planets in there, what the survival sort of structure could be in the future. It could be much more in depth, much more modularized.
You know what I think of when you bring up this idea is No Man's Sky has mentioned that you're going to be making your suit and upgrading it for being able to explore in different areas before you could, get out into space, because you also have to make, I think, your ship in that game too. So kind of like that concept is really exciting for people that, okay, there is progress there. You're going to start with nothing and build into, okay, now you've got your suit that's yours that you're more attached to. Go build a ship that can break Atmo. Like, these are legitimate goals people will set to get into the game.
You've also got that direct competition from games like Empyrean, where literally you start off on a planet with a ship that's not capable of flying, and it feels like that kind of survival scenario. So I think, at the moment at least, it's kind of important for space engineers to kind of develop in those directions, because there are starting to be other games coming out there that are not dissimilar and trying to do similar things, provide similar goals. And it's kind of time that space engineers got some of this stuff sorted, because they got the jump on everyone else, and you kind of worry that these bits are a bit missing at the moment. We need that goal that we keep talking about, to be honest.
Yeah, it's all coming back to coherence again. Yeah, for sure.
For me, a lot in a game like this, the immersive aspect is always the stuff that really excites me about games, and the fact that I can have a whole scenario. I mean, people have watched like the RP series that I've done, where we've come up with cool, fun scenarios, but they're not possible, to just play, for somebody to come in and just play, to be able to actually start off and be like, okay, I'm on this planet, I've got nothing, I don't have a spacesuit, and I want to leave it, I want to go explore off into wherever, and actually have that goal. That would be cool. I'd be down for that.
Yeah, that would make much more interesting content for us YouTubers, just to make something, and for you too, viewers, when you're playing the game, to have a coherent goal. Like I know where I am now, and I know where I need to go, and here are the things I need to do to get there, and it's going to be really exciting on the way because I'm going to run into other players, AI factions, pirates, and stuff, and it's going to be a really exciting adventure that you create, a true sandbox, in other words.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's certainly something that they're making big leaps and bounds with at the moment, but it's something, like you say, that needs more work and more potential, because the best thing we want is to come into the game and know that there is some sort of reason why we want to go further than we currently sit. You know, it's not just this scenario now where it's like you've almost got, and I hate to call them arbitrary, but they are kind of, there's like, you need to get uranium and power your reactors. You need to get ice and convert it into oxygen. Once you've got those two things covered, you're kind of sorted.
You're really good. Like, you could just sit there. I mean, I guess now we've got pirates and stuff, but you basically could, you just like, get your lawn chair out and relax. You're good. You're done.
Yeah, so making you really work for that stuff has got to be good.
Yeah. You got to have those, even the little goals. The little goals mean something. Okay, so what were yours, Wasted? Let's get into your ideas.
Okay, well, one thing that's been a big bugbear for me, and I know it's a big bugbear for some of the guys that have been commenting on the Patchology videos in the past as well, is the UI currently. It's getting really cluttered, and there's bits of information that, especially with planets incoming, you think, well, we want this info. So what I'd really like a UI revamp, and I'm talking about separating out the menus in a way that they're a bit more usable, perhaps taking some hints from some of the more context-sensitive menus that more recent games are using. And I know it's sort of generated from the console environment, which is sometimes looked upon as a negative, but often it does result in a UI that's actually very swift and easy to use, especially if it's done well for a PC setup. And also, I mean, stuff like, if we're going to be on planets, I want to know how far away the surface is. And I want to know what my speed is relative to that planet, rather than just as an arbitrary figure through space. I want to have some sort of relation to the universe around me in the UI. And that's something that, it's almost a bit Kerbal Space Programming, but it's that sort of idea.
Not a bad game to be looking at, for sure.
Actually, I want to bring something up here, and I think it's really important to talk about it, because let's examine products for an example as an analog quickly. We all know about Apple products, correct? We all know about Windows products as well. Now, you may be one user or another, and you may be really into one or another, but the way that Apple markets itself is the interface is really attractive. It's a very beautiful thing. Now, it doesn't really matter that it's not necessarily faster than a Windows computer, but it's built well, it looks good, and I'm not an Apple user, but I can admit that it looks good, and I think the same thing applies to games. Now, if you look at games like Star Citizen or Elite Dangerous, which are some that immediately come to mind, which are sort of in the same realm as science fiction sandbox, you notice that the UI is very polished and attractive. It's not just about the information that's being displayed, but also about the way it's being displayed. And this can have a huge impact on somebody just getting into the game. And currently, I think that we've got a lot more features than when we started, but the UI has lagged behind, not just in information provided to the user, but also visually. I think it's personally, honestly, I feel it's been lagging behind. I mean, we only just got the ability to make it transparent, and we needed that for so long. In Wasted, I think that the additional information is a great idea. In fact, I would say you should be able to customize just how much information you want displayed on the screen, because there is so much in this game. They got to give themselves more credit. I mean, there could be so much more information we could be seeing.
I'd love to have it a little bit more sparsed out too, especially when we're talking about like having waypoints on our screens or our beacons, how quickly things get just jumbled. If you've got a couple of ships with a couple of antennas online near you, it gets nuts, really crazy. If they could just kind of like sparse that out into modules, so we can just like look at a computer screen or a HUD that we could put into a cockpit that will show, okay, now I want to know when I have a target. A targeting system would be nice. Just talking about UI elements. So we can be like flipping through and finding whose ship is where and what's going on.
And easy info. Nice. I mean,
yeah.
This is a really abstract example, but I'm going to go to World of Warcraft for this one. And I feel that it's kind of apparent for space engineers, because from what I understand of the code behind the game, it does kind of support this. But some sort of moddable UI system, supporting, I mean, LUA is what World of Warcraft uses, but that isn't necessarily what you need to use for this. But vice versa, a moddable UI system. Make that something that's moddable, and so you can go out there and people can create amazing UIs for you to use, where the information is the stuff that you want it to be, and make it customizable so it changes when you go into a ship versus what it is when a player. Because when you're on a player, you don't care how many damn gyroscopes you've got, because guess what? It's none. So
maybe they've been working on it with being able to hide stuff, but yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying.
It does seem like the game kind of fits that sort of approach with how it's been structured, and so why not go the whole hog and make it so that players can display the information they want, and those clever guys out there that are making these awesome mods that we're all using and these awesome scripts we're all using can make some damn awesome UIs to go with them.
Indeed. A targeting system would not go amiss, guys, especially for telling our turrets what to shoot at. I'm just saying. Waypoints and beacons are fine, but I'd love to be able to be, tab target over to something and tell my turrets to fire it.
I'm sure you give the scripters the chance, they'll make that for you.
Yep.
But that's
So what was your other idea? What else we got?
Okay, so this one's a bit more far-fetched, but I was thinking of, as I mentioned earlier, it's like this idea of galaxies, this idea of a sort of an actual structured map, where instead of it being exploration where you travel and there are asteroids and I assume exploration with planets will essentially work similarly. You'll come across a planet, it will have some moons, but there will be no continuity to any of it. So I would really like, and I'm envisaging something where you have systems and they're connected together by jump drives, and there are things populating these systems, and the systems themselves have some sort of biome. It's that sort of an idea, and it very much ties into what Morph was saying about the idea of mapping and being able to track where people are and what factions own what and so on. It's connected all into that, which works very nicely. But it's that idea of continuity and there being a big system, albeit something that players could create perhaps, or multiple options, because obviously
custom star systems.
Yeah,
that would be
custom
cool.
Star systems where things are actually have some continuity to them, and you've got
I guess
a
part
sun
one of that would be actually having star
and
systems. Actual like a sun that you were saying, you can get closer to the sun maybe, or jump to other star systems. Yeah, I like that.
That would create a lot more interest and coherence. I think for sure, other than just finding random planets and asteroids in a very large, an infinite universe, it'd be great to have actual systems. Yes, agreed.
So in part of maybe the generation of these systems, I just had this great thought. They could actually take all the skyboxes they've got on the workshop, and when you download them, and it could randomly generate the system with a new skybox. Based
very
on
clever, and
how cool would that be?
color grade it based upon the colors found in that skybox. Even maybe take it a step
You're
further
in
and
space, and it's green.
Oh, this skybox is very heavily black and green, so this universe is going to have that sort of light and that sort of environment, and very much.
Or this system is very icy and there's a lot of dust. And there's a different type of asteroid generation.
Perhaps we're going a bit far with this now. I don't know.
I don't see how that wouldn't be too possible. I mean, if you could change the skybox on the fly in the game, if they made it possible, maybe you hit a jump point, like you said, a hyperspace point or beacon or something, and it generated just another area like it normally does. But now we've got a sun maybe in the center, and then it generates the planets as it would, and then chooses a skybox. I don't see if that's too difficult.
No, I don't think it's far. I mean, it seems far-fetched, but it's really not. You're really only scaling up the automatic generation very far, all the way to a system level. So instead of, say, generating planets or asteroid fields, you're generating an entire system based on an algorithm. So I guess, it's a lot more work, but it's basically the same concept. It's just much more coherent.
Piecemealing it out, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the end, this is all fueled off and ties back to something I've mentioned before on Patchology, which is the whole idea of making some sort of freelancer-esque concept within Space Engineers where this could all tie together. But I'm pretty sure some of what you got to say about ideas, Shack, has got some connections to that as well. So what about what you came up with? What is it that you really want to see?
All right, so I've got one that I think is fairly simple and one that's ridiculously complicated. The first one that I'm going to talk about is the complicated one, and that's going to be faction AI. That's going to be, so they just introduced a faction, right? What was it, IC something? It was a player-made faction that they put into the game. With a carrier, it's got fighters, it's got cruisers. I'd love to see an AI, though, that actually controls factions like this one that they've just added, that gives them goals and a purpose. So instead of you just got, okay, there's a faction, it's out there, and maybe it's not hostile, maybe it is hostile, but if it wants to produce, say, another carrier or a battle group, it'll have to send out miners that mine in way of like gaining an economy. It hits a certain amount of points in that economy by mining the resources it needs, and it spawns in a carrier. This way, when players are out there flying around, like I said before, immersion is really important to me. The idea that it's a living universe, that these factions are out doing things because they think this is what it needs to be done. I mean, it doesn't have to be super complex, especially to begin with. It could always be iterated on later, but just having a faction, pirate faction, AI faction, going around doing its own business, and then maybe producing a microeconomy out of that idea of, all right, you've sent out miners, this faction has, and players could pirate those miners and shoot them down and take all their goods, or maybe they could sell stuff that they've mined to the faction, making an economy, so they could take that whatever credits, money away, or whatever they want to use for money, to buy the resources that they need because they've been having trouble finding them. I mean, that would make the world seem so much more alive than just, well, we've got a pirate base out there and it spawned some pirates and it sent them at us, which is what we have now. So that would be my first one. And, connecting to yours, Wasted, your idea of having that freelancer-like world, if you could come into an area that we were just talking about and seeing these factions going about their business. Maybe they are even hostile to each other, so if their ships get a little bit too close, they fire at each other. And you could come into the middle of that firefight and not have a clue what's going on and decide on a side you want to join, or just sit there and watch the fireworks.
100%. 100%. I mean, I hadn't necessarily envisaged that, because what I was thinking of in my mind was something that was player created, because I hadn't gone to that sort of level of scope. But obviously that just makes things all the better, and that's kind of what Freelancer was like. You had NPC factions on top of player-made factions, and there was all this sort of diplomatic stuff going on, and it would be pretty crazy to see that sort of stuff implemented. I mean, admittedly, this is a long way from what we're currently looking at, but I don't necessarily think it could be that hard to introduce on a basic level, like you say. And I kind of cringe to use this term, but even on a basic level, I think it would introduce that idea of like kind of emergent gameplay, where when you go out into the environment, you don't necessarily know what to expect. And
I mean, because right now we kind of do, right?
Yeah,
we know
exactly.
It's like there's going to be an asteroid. It might have the resources. It might not. Maybe there's this new pirate ship there. But like right now, finally, we're at that edge where it's like we might not know what's there.
There might be something hostile. There might just it might just be a scenario that we're not equipped to deal with, which is not really the scenario we get at the moment, where it's like the worst case scenario is you run out of fuel, which just doesn't seem quite where it should be for the game. It gives it that bit that takes it out of just sandbox, albeit a survival sandbox. It's still kind of that sandbox bit is the bit that's in capital letters.
And more, if you've played Eve, I know you know about immersive or emergent gameplay with stuff like this.
Yeah, I mean, when you said that, I sort of just thought of like the events that you run into different factions, or you could join a faction like Galante or Minotaur, and you could start fighting against the other one. It just added a little bit more to the game, especially for players who weren't interacting so much with other actual players. Because let's just be honest, it's not with such a huge universe that we're talking about, with the scope we're talking about, running into actual people might be kind of difficult, even if it's a super populated server. So having a server alive with NPC factions would just add to the feeling that you're in a living, breathing, immersive universe. And yeah, you would fly out and you don't know what you're going to come across. You may come across a cargo train with a faction that you could take over as a pirate and try to get rich off of it, or you could help out somebody else in a fight with another faction and you could gain some credits for it and have your own personal space in their faction area or something like that. It just opens up the possibility for so much more than what we currently have in the game. So much more possibility other than just like running out of fuel, like you said, Wasted.
Yep, we're out of fuel. But now what do we do? We'll go mine more.
Yeah.
Let's hope this next asteroid has some with our infinite jetpack.
And for everybody who's kind of being a naysayer about it, think about what we have right now. We already have a faction system implemented into the game. We already have a faction that they've shown in the last patch made by a player. We've got pirates that kind of roam around. So we have like the pseudo beginnings of something really awesome here.
It's not even like this is based off fairy tale. Indeed, we have the beginnings of something that, with a bit of work, and especially with a company that's got good AI as one of their other projects. Admittedly, this is not under the banner of Keen Software House. They are different companies, but it's all Marek Rosa, and it's all stuff that could eventually feed back into Space Engineers. I think that's something that could potentially be achievable and could really catapult Space Engineers from a pretty damn good sandbox game, which is fun to play, into something that's capable of replicating games like Freelancer, replicating games like Elite and like Star Citizen, and you go from being a sandbox for I can go into the game and build what I want within the game to being the game can kind of be what I want it to be.
But you can build something in that universe to go up against what you want to, and it's all you that has created this thing. It's all you. So when you're fighting against an enemy, it's not like you've purchased a ship that you know that other people have said is good. You're using your own design and your own thought process to combat an issue that you know exists. And that's what this game would have over, say, Elite Dangerous and Star Citizen, because those ships are pre-made. I mean, you can equip different modules, yes. You can have different crew members, yes. But the ship is still something that the mods have already, the developers have made for you that you've purchased in the game. This is something that you've made, that you've built with your own hands.
Yeah.
That's so much more satisfying.
You're always playing inside somebody else's ship that they've come up with, and you got to play under their limitations. But the fact that you could make your own thing and have a reason now to build that Star Destroyer or whatever that you built, because you have a goal, you have a mission to accomplish now, because you've decided that you hate this one faction and they're going away, then go for it and get your buddies to help you. That's what I would love to see. So that's my faction AI spiel right there.
I do think, though, that phrasing it like that, where you say, hey, it would be the player could create everything. The player could create the ships. The player could create the stations, and there'd be faction AI going behind it. I mean, that does kind of put it in perspective quite how vast demand it is, whether it's possible or not. I mean, I do see the potential in the game for it. Whether they can pull that off, I mean, you've got to take that with a pinch of salt. That is definitely something that is incredibly hard to achieve. But I also think...
go ahead.
I also think it's an opportunity to move on to something that's perhaps a bit more possible to achieve, which I know your second idea is a bit more along those sort of lines.
A little bit more maybe realistic, at least for the short term, for sure. But real quick, a game that did pull off that kind of faction battles and whatnot was X3 Albion Prelude. Came out quite a few years ago, where a player could run his own empire and fight against these other empires that were out there in the universe. So if you're wondering, has this ever been accomplished in the past? Yes, it has. That game did it. Incredibly complex from the player's perspective on how to accomplish anything, but fun game. So that's why I'm always like, another game could do this. It's just... when are they gonna, go out and do it, and take all the time and effort to do it? But anyways, my second idea was way more within the realm of something they could do more in the short term, and that was physical cargo. I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with something like, what's a good example? Star Citizen actually is doing this. Physical cargo, as in the stuff that you're carrying is physical. You can go in, you can look at it, you can touch it, you can pick it up with a forklift, and this is the part that I like having cargo containers that you can pick up off your ship and drop off someplace, especially if we're going to have multiplayer soon. When your buddy's like, hey, I need uranium, you could drop off 2 pallets of, 2 tons of uranium at his base and actually see that cargo instead of always having it tubed everywhere. It's just something I've always wanted, is to be able to actually see, hey, I'm hauling a load of cargo, and it's not just these magic boxes that hold everything, but it's something we can actually unload from a ship and see it and open up. But maybe that's crazy.
No, I think it creates a reason to have large ships. I mean, if you're a very large fleet vessel, you have to assume in the real world, if you were to build something like that, you'd need a lot of room for the supplies that you would need to go on that mission. You need room for munitions, rooms for people to live, rooms for food. And to be able to actually see that is so much more immersive to see, on this palette, this has a certain amount of, well, I don't know if it'd be uranium, that'd be radioactive and dangerous to look at, but I mean, things that are less radioactive,
right?
like steel plates.
Something that may not kill you.
Stuff that may not kill you.
Yeah, steel plates, steel tubes, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be great.
Definitely.
Like when you take over another person's vessel, you're like, oh my God, look at all this great stuff we have here. You can visually confirm it and see how much of it actually is.
Just big stacks of stuff sitting there. One of the very first things I ever tried to make in Space Engineers, back before rotors and pistons and all that sort of stuff, was a thing that literally just picked up cargo boxes and moved them around, because I thought, hey, that's a cool thing to do. I want a cargo transporter. And was there any purpose to it? No. Did it work? No. So yeah, it was all great. It would just, you'd drop it and it would fall through the floor, and most of the ships didn't pick it up particularly well, and they'd break their landing gear, which ironically has been fixed in the latest patch, which is great. It's great to know, but that's the sort of driving force. That's the sort of thing. When you think space engineers, you think, I want to be able to move and see my cargo, and I want to be able to move it around. I don't want some UI that tells me I have X amount of rock. I want to see a big stack of rock.
Well, in some ways,
I always like that concept.
In some ways, I think it helps to have the tubes. Like, say, if you're refueling or you need to use oxygen, I think the tubes are greatly suited for that, because it's a convenient way to refuel your ship quickly if you're traveling. Yeah, It does.
I always like the idea of not only are you carrying just like the stuff that you build things out of, but when I first saw Space Engineers, I pictured, when I saw like the first gun turret or something, I always pictured that you would build this large object and then transport it to the ship you wanted to install it on, not just take the base material and take it over and build it on top of. So like the idea of having a cargo vessel full of gun turrets or barrels and things like that was always something that I was like, I wish I could see it. I wish I could do that. Like, you're a weapons trader and you've got all this gear in the back and you can actually tell what you've got. So when you're shooting that pirate ship and you see its loot kind of fall open, you see the things you want. You're like, oh man, I need all that stuff. Come back. Stop floating away. But that's the immersive part that I always want in games that you never quite get to.
That also opens the door, I think, to a lot of other things you may not immediately think about. You need to create stuff to, like Wasted did in the early part of the game, lift these things and move them around. You need to make your ships big enough to have an opening where you can transport them out. You need a docking area where you could have an offloading and loading area. I mean, it creates all this other programmatic need that makes much more interest in the game, much more immersive elements in the game.
Yeah, it just ties back to that goal thing again. I mean, in the end, the goal doesn't necessarily have to be that complex, as long as what you need to do to achieve it is both interesting and, challenges you as far as mentally is concerned, but also provides you with like this process to go through. Like you're saying, at the moment the process is basically build first ship that can mine, scale up. There we go.
Yeah, that's pretty much the process for getting started in Space Engineers. And building the tools to get the job done is as simple as building welder ship, drilling ship, grinding ship.
Yeah. If you really want to speed it up, you start building ships for stuff. But it's still this overriding idea of just build initial thing and then scale. Whereas this could add this idea of like there are a whole bunch of extra constraints on how ships need to be designed, and I think that's the thing that the game is really lacking. It ties back into something I've mentioned about aerodynamics before. It ties back into a lot of stuff we've mentioned, to be honest, is this idea of constraints on how you design things that mean that instead of just being able to just cobble things together, in the end, the square with a thruster on every side and a cargo block in the middle functions just as well as any other ship in the game. And I don't feel that should be the case. I feel like this game has the potential to challenge your intellect and the potential to challenge you to design cool stuff, but it has at the moment no interest in kind of encouraging you to do so.
I think
I could agree with that, definitely.
I think the overarching theme of all of our much wanted additions to the game is that we would like the game to be more immersive, for there to be goals in the game, for it to be a more cohesive game. I mean, these are really basic, but they do so much more. And I think we all agree here that Space Engineers is really on the cusp of becoming that amazing game that only comes out so often that you remember for many, many years. Like, Captain, you know what I'm going to say here. It's Star Wars Galaxies. Like, there was so much greatness in that game we still remember today. And it's still around even for a few people with the emulator. It's on the cusp of doing that. It's so close, and there's just some things that we would love to see to really push it over the edge.
And I know that the developers are very, very against talking along these lines, but I feel...
Would you say keenly aware?
I'm keenly aware, yeah, indeed. But...
Womp womp.
You'll be making wasted space jokes next.
I was just trying to think of one.
But I know they are aware that... I'm not aware, but I've talked to them about the idea of potentially this sort of thought that they could have been a Minecraft sort of game. And they don't believe it. And I don't get that, because I totally see it. Because they're doing things that are completely different to what Minecraft are doing. They're offering all sorts of options as far as scenarios and that sort of element is concerned. You know, there's different structure behind this. The scenarios, the physics, the engineering, it's different. And yet, that little bit of continuity is still missing. And however hard it might be to achieve in a game that's this complex, I think that's what we're really all nailing down on. Everything we've linked together here has come down to this idea of continuity and goals.
Can I get a little philosophical here? Because I think I need to.
Dangerous.
I know, it's a little dangerous. I think that a lot of people like to limit themselves when they think about what could be. Because they see what they have and see what's available, and they don't think about what they... A lot of people don't even know what they want until they're presented with the thing that they would like. So what I would encourage to the people in this room, Shack and Wasted, and everyone listening and everyone watching this video is that don't just limit yourself to what you see. Like what we've done here, all of these ideas are big ideas. We're dreaming big. So what I'm saying is dream big, because there's no harm in dreaming big. There's no budget for dreaming big. What happens is when you want to create it is you create a budget. That will happen later. But in order for you to reach that amazing level, you need to think big. And that's why we're presenting these ideas. And we realize we're all intelligent individuals. We all know, Keen, I know some of you guys are listening to this, that it's a difficult thing to put forward these ideas, and you realize the logistics of creating them are so massive, but it's important to say them. It's important to have a goal and think about where it could be, because eventually, if you develop enough interest, you will get there. I have confidence.
Indeed. Indeed. And we know that, Keen knows what they're doing. They're coming up with some great stuff. They already have, so it's only going to go up.
But that's why we're here.
And the patches that are coming out, planets are coming out. They said over a long time ago, they were like, planets? We can't do planets. That's crazy. And now here we are, like on the cusp of getting planets, and landing gear fixed.
Oh yeah, 100%. The planets were never in the original game plan. I can tell you that for a fact.
No way.
They were not on the cards, 100%. But I think the important part to get from this, and I hope it's pretty clear from the enthusiasm in our voices and so on, people have said so in the past at least, everything that's driving this discussion has been from the idea that we all believe that Space Engineers is A, great game already, but B, could be potentially a really great game. So it's all positive stuff, so no worries, Keen. Thanks for listening. And I guess this has started to get a pretty long discussion, and we've talked through some pretty heavy points.
Yeah.
Should we head on towards wrapping it up a bit, maybe?
Yeah, I'm gonna
see what people's opinions are.
Yeah, so I think.
All right, well, let's just do that.
Yeah. Let's wrap it up, and I think this was a great discussion. We want to know what you guys think, guys. Post in the comment section. Let us know what your thoughts are on our ideas, or if you have any other good ideas. And remember, we're going to be having an interview sometime in the very near future with some of the very big guys over at Keen about what they're going to be doing in the future. So if you want to suggest something or you want to ask a question, make sure you post it, because we're going to be looking at those.
And I got to say, thanks very much for CaptainShack coming along. Hope you come back in future for a few more of these sort of discussions, because it's been a lot of fun getting you involved with this stuff.
I am always down for talking about Space Engineers, man. You guys just let me know. I'm down for it.
I don't hope. I expect Shaq.
This is happening, so just show up. Fair enough.
All right, guys. Well, it's been really good. We talked through some pretty complex subjects, so I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you leave final comments down below, and this has been Wasted Space signing out. Thanks a lot for coming, guys.
Morphologist signing out. See you guys next time.
And this is CaptainShack with the XP Gamers. I'll see you guys next time.